Hello, afternoon, morning. How are you today? Hello. I am the lady who makes notes all over the place, and I have some thoughts on Maui that I wanted to share. Essentially, for me, my sister and I had gone to Maui when we were teenagers. I had visited when I was married to Maui and to Hawaii place, Hawaii, and wanted to say there's a tragic story that's happening in Maui. It's absolutely horrible. And what I wanted to say was the fact that um, Vancouverites have been known to visit Hawaii for a long time. And it would be remiss that uh, Hawaii had not gone internationally with the story and has stated that uh, there possibility of homeless people living in Vancouver or another part of the world. It might have some unawareness about what's going on in that part of the world, in Maui, in Lahaina. And basically, what happened was there was a major fire. Uh, they say that about 43 people were killed, I believe. And they're still having to go through the DNA of many others that were caught in that fire. And what they need is the DNA from people who might have family who live in that part of the world. And what you can do is to notify your doctor or notify your next of kin that you want to um, help in that way, and that there would be support for you to be able to do that, and to go to some authority, offer your DNA, and or to send it to the powers that be in Maui, and they would, you know, get your DNA fixed to figure out, who belongs to who, and have it figured out. And I wanted to get that message out. I think it's terrible what's going on. It could be very well be that someone lives in a tent somewhere, unaware about what happened to Maui, and to then find out weeks and months later that somebody that they knew in another part of the world had been traumatized and killed in this horrendous fire. And I do think that um, that should be set up internationally because Maui in Hawaii is an international place, and that's how it should be approached by us. That people who are from um, people from Japan have connections. People from Canada have connections. People, obviously, the United States. That is the main one because they are the ones that decided to go in and take Hawaii. Um, so there are international things that need to progress and that needed to be done. And the churches and the governments that be should offer flights and should offer replica- you know repatriation for people who are going through this, and offer certainly offer counseling, certainly offer some services for people who have suffered a significant loss, and I think that should be done. And uh, for those who aren't aware, I'm just sending this thing along to At any rate, what I'm saying is that uh, this is an international problem, and that people of the world should know about what's going on in Maui, and should know that this happened, and that people were some of them were kicked out of Maui. Well, not kicked out. They were taken over to Oahu and other places, other parts of the islands, to recuperate and to get back on their feet, sort of thing. And what happened to them, according to the news, was that they were uh, uh, left in a hotel room for a couple of days and then told to get out of the hotel room and then go live out in the street in Oahu and things like that. And, it was really not a very good way of dealing with it. You know, they don't have the housing. We don't have the housing to accommodate everybody here either, like, as in other places. Have that same problem. There are lots of homeless people living in tents. New York City, California, all those places around the world. People do live in tents, and part of it is a choice. Uh, they live in RVs in Australia. They live in RVs in United States. People might not be watching the news and be fully unaware that their relatives who lived on Lahaina or on all these islands who aren't aware about all this. And they might have a relative that had lived on Maui and not be aware. So they should, possibly go internationally with this. And that's pretty much what it's about. The other part is the history. Hawaii does have a history of um, the United States coming onto their lands, uh, possibly getting them drunk, getting them stoned, and then having this lackadaisical way of saying, well, if you work and do this, then you can maintain your getting drunk, and then we'll build this up, sort of thing. And you know, Anderson Cooper had made that claim uh, a while ago. Uh, there was an article in the Washington Post. I'll read it to you for a second. 1 second, just have to get it. Anderson Cooper on the money, history, and the dark side of great fortunes. His great great grandfather was Colonius Vanderbilt, men in American history. His mother, Gloria Vanderbilt, was a center for the sensational trial in the 1930s when her mother and aunt battled for custody of the little girl in her trust fund worth more than $80 million, etc., etc. Going further on, uh, the now teamed up with historian Catherine Howell for another book, Another Empire, a story of the rise and fall of American fortune, etc. John Jacob Astor, the son of a German butcher who came to the country in 1784 and ruthlessly amassed his astounding wealth by selling North America and beaver pelts, are probably so prized that the animals was almost extinct in Europe, and acquiring large parcels of land in Manhattan. They exploited indigenous fur trades by inducing alcohol to the tribes and becoming New York's biggest slumlord in the 19th century, making masons and rules in New York in 100 years. Caroline Astoria, Mrs. Astor, was undisputed queen of the Gilded Age. The former Walter Astoria Hotel was created by the two Astor cabins, and John Jacob died in Titanic in 1912. His oldest son, the 20-year-old Vincent, inherited 69 million, about 2 billion now. The Vanderbilts competed for power, prestige over decades. The Vanderbilt fortune was so amassed that the Astors was forced to accept their money. None of you rich interlopers met the last Mrs. Astor, another grand dame of New York society, and a young man, but who did not recognize or acknowledge him, who was working as a waiter at a chicken restaurant. By then, the Astor fortune was almost gone. Cooper sat down with the Washington Post and discussed money, power, etc. But essentially, he remembers Goodwill Hunting, the regular guys that don't make movies, uh, the Commodore Vanderbilt, age 11, went to school. Um, but he said that there's a pathology, and he sent his wife to a mental asylum. He sent his son, who may or may not have been gay, to the same asylum at the end of his life and being fed by a nurse. He's still obsessing upon clawing the rent of some poor old lady. That's a pathology to me. And do you think that great dynasties are doomed to kind of unhappiness, of kind of misery? I don't think it's just those great fortunes. Most of those people who have achieved initial levels of financial services or renowned fame, I don't think it comes from a good place. I don't think it comes from making people early on liars, focusing on something other people around us and other people are focusing on. I don't think that comes from necessarily happy place. The founding of the asteroid was brutal. The supplying of alcohol to indigenous people just wasn't an occasional thing. It was part and parcel of the business. The U.S. government actually tried to stop the sale of alcohol, and John Jacob Astor did everything possible to circumvent that. He wasn't just ruthless with indigenous populations. He was with people who worked for him. And the last these structures that John Jacob Astor used his son to continue to great effort. Will cram as many immigrants in as possible, divide up rooms, subdivide rooms, multiple family living in one room, no ventilation, never picked up the building because it was going to revert it back to the Astor at the end of the lease. So why fix it up? This disaster 100 years later stunned people by trying to get the slum business. I think the views that the family seemed to have, which justified their actions, was that John Jacob Astor came with nothing worth higher than their fortunes. All of these other immigrants could do it if they wanted to. They're not willing to work as hard, which is obviously a very limited way to see things. And that's been part of what happened. Is that in those days they